You are listening to the Rewards Canada podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 102 of the Rewards Canada podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss air miles, bankruptcy, and Bank of Montreal. Now, this podcast may be a little bit different than usual because normally I have an outline in front of me or even some speaking points, but this one's going to be totally fly by the seat of my pants. And so I apologize if I'm going to maybe go back and forth, jump forward and back between some topics and maybe repeat myself. But, hopefully this is still fresh enough in my memory from all the interviews and covering it on the website just a couple of days ago. And so let's go ahead with this podcast and discuss what has transpired in the latest saga of air miles. So here we are. It's, let's set the stage, early afternoon, March 9th, 2023. And news is broken by Bloomberg that Loyalty Ventures, which is the parent company of Loyalty One and Air Miles, Loyalty Ventures is US-based, Loyalty One is Canadian-based, and they operate the Air Miles program. Bloomberg puts out the report that Loyalty Ventures is preparing to file for bankruptcy. And so panic ensues. It gets out into the news, it gets out onto all the blogs, including Rewards Canada. We cover it. And yeah, so basically that's the start of it. It basically looks like, darn, air miles may crash here. We may see the end of air miles. And so some sites are out there saying, go and redeem your miles now, get rid of them and all this stuff. Others, like ourselves, are saying, well, you know what? Yeah, probably you should redeem them, but not going so far as saying redeem your miles now because there could be legal liabilities to that. We saw that in 2016 with the whole expiring miles thing when people rushed to redeem their air miles for things they didn't want. So, as a publisher, you don't want to be on the hook for your readers going out and doing something they don't want to do. So that's why, when I posted about it, I said, you know what, you have to take the gamble and decide for yourself. And basically what I did is put out an example of what I was doing, and that was going out and redeeming my miles. I told my family, go shopping on the Air Miles site. But anyways, so what everybody was doing, so many people were going to do this, that the Air Miles site didn't crash per se, but the merchandise page was timing out. And I think that was mainly due to the traffic. It was potentially Air Miles may have shut it down to stop a run on miles. We don't know for sure which way or what happened. It could be either or, it could have been both. So for a while there, the merchandise and other redemption options were unavailable. They did eventually put up a site under maintenance page instead of just a blank page that would time out. And then merchandise popped up for a little bit and then disappeared again once word got out that merchandise was up. But it looks like they had it all fixed the next day, and that's kind of where we go from there. So we have this whole rush. Everybody's panicking on the Thursday night, and rightfully so. I mean, we've never seen a loyalty program announce a bankruptcy. It's a little bit different than the expiring miles issue of 2016 because Air Miles wasn't going anywhere. They were, just going to expire everybody's miles at the end of that year that had been, in their accounts for 5 years or more. And, Air Miles didn't move on that until December of 2016. So after a lot of people had already redeemed for stuff that they didn't want, and it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And that's kind of what set the stage for Air Miles' demise. Up until 2016, this program was like doing amazing. And then from that point, it kind of fell, just kept falling and falling, and that's kind of led us to this point where now the parent company said that they're going to declare bankruptcy, and that they did on March 10th. So Air Miles parent company declares bankruptcy in Canada and the U.S., or court protection in Canada and bankruptcy in the U.S. But at that same time, we get the news that BMO confirms that they want to buy the Air Miles program, which is great news for members. The program's not just going to disappear from the face of the earth and your miles might be safe. I want to say, so they come out with this news March 10th, and it's crazy. We are all over the news. This is all over the news on the Friday. I was lucky enough to get my newsletter out to all our listeners and readers that day because I fit it in between all these TV and radio and print interviews. It was insane. I mean, and that shows what Air Miles is to Canadians. Being such a large program with over 10 million members, it creates waves in the news when something happens. And this was big news that they could potentially go under, and now we have BMO saying that they want to buy it. And that's kind of why I'm doing this podcast as well, because in those interviews, the media has to cut. They have time, they have to edit what you say and what they're talking about. So not everything that you try to get across that should be getting across to the listeners, the readers, the watchers, and all that stuff makes it into those pieces. So that's kind of why I'm also doing this podcast, is to cover maybe some of those things that didn't make into those pieces. And one of the big things is what people were saying, well, this is great. BMO is, this knight in shining armor coming to save all these Air Miles members and saving their miles. I'll be honest, I don't really think that was 100% the case. It is great news, absolutely. I'm happy that all these Air Miles are potentially going to be safe. And I have to say potentially. Here I am jumping back and forth between things. But potentially safe because the acquisition has not been approved. It has to be approved by the courts. And also, potentially other people may come in and make an offer for the program as well. In all likelihood, it's going to be Bank of Montreal. We haven't heard of any other offers in place. And honestly, it makes the most sense for Bank of Montreal to buy Air Miles, and it doesn't make sense for the courts to say no unless, a better suitor comes along. But anyway, so the big thing that I noticed when I talked with a lot of the media on Friday, which didn't make it into the cuts, is why Bank of Montreal was doing this. And, this is speculation on my part, but it just kind of seems to make the most sense, is they are doing it to save their portfolio of credit card holders. Think about it. If you have 1.5 million Bank of Montreal Air Miles credit card holders, and that's just a guess. I'm thinking they probably have between three quarters of a million and 1.5 million card holders that hold Air Miles cards. So if you think about it, if Air Miles went under, there's 1.5 million, I'm just using that number, card holders that no longer have that reward program. Now, it's easy enough to BMO to transfer them over to BMO Rewards. Not a huge deal, but you're going to have members who are unhappy about this. They've lost all these miles, and they have a sour taste in their mouth with the Air Miles program. And who's tied into the Air Miles program? Bank of Montreal. So they stood to lose a lot of potential. Or not potential, because these are actual customers. So they stood to lose a lot of credit card customers if Air Miles went under. I'm just, again, using hypothetical numbers here, 1.5 million members, if 500,000 of those members said, what, I'm done, I don't want to bank with BMO, I don't want a BMO Rewards credit card, and went to somebody else, that's a big chunk of the revenue pie for Bank of Montreal. So this is, for me, this seems like the most obvious reason why Bank of Montreal is doing this. In their interviews, they said, oh, we want to reinvigorate the program. It means so much to Canadians, all this stuff. To me, the main reason they did it was to save their own credit card customer base. And yeah, they will reinvigorate the program so they can save those card holders. They don't want those card holders moving to other programs. And had Air Miles gone down, they'd move them to BMO Rewards. And honestly, BMO Rewards is one of the worst proprietary credit card programs in Canada. I mean, worst is maybe a harsh way to say it, but least valuable, let's put it that way, least valuable credit card reward programs in Canada when you compare it to membership rewards, Scene Plus, even Avion Rewards, and that. It's quite a weak program. So that's where we set the stage. BMO has said, we're going to buy Air Miles, and, in all likelihood, we'll see this go through. And, I think in the coming months, we'll see that Air Miles will become a product of Bank of Montreal. And they say they're going to reinvigorate the program. Is that going to happen? Well, that's the other thing I talked about a lot in the media, was their track record. And a lot of them didn't touch upon this either, is that Bank of Montreal just devalues their programs over and over. It seems like almost on an annual basis that BMO Rewards has been devalued. Or their credit cards, and or both. We write about it a lot on the blog. So if you've followed Rewards Canada for a while, I've been a pretty tough critic of Bank of Montreal because of what they keep doing to their reward programs and to their credit cards. And so if their track record is any indication, I don't know if we'll see air miles be reinvigorated and get better. And that's the next, and that brings in, what are they going to do with the program? What can they do with the program? Because really right now, all it is a credit card / online shopping rewards program. You do have Shell and Metro in Ontario, but outside of those two big partners, they don't have a lot of big partners anymore. And there really, I don't think, is anybody left to add that would be, provide them with nationwide coverage like they used to have. There's, Sobeys and all that moved to Scene Plus. A lot of other companies are just starting their own programs because the back-end systems, the cost to run your own loyalty program is a lot cheaper now. It's not this huge expense like Air Miles charge. And then, I think that's part of Air Miles' downfall again. Is the expense of being in that program. And I think that's why they lost a lot of their partners over the years. You had the 2016 expiring miles issues, which left, a bad taste in some merchants' mouths because they took the brunt of it too, even though it was Air Miles changing it. You have these stores, people complaining to the cashiers saying, I'm so mad at Air Miles. Why are you guys doing this to the merchant? When the merchant had no control over it. So there's so many factors that I think have led to the demise of, or I can't say demise because they're not gone, but to the, general falling out of Air Miles from being one of the best programs in Canada, or one of the most popular. And, it goes back to that expense. A good friend of mine from many years ago runs a couple hair salons here in Calgary. And I think at the time he had one or two. Air Miles approached him if he wanted to issue Air Miles. And he told me these things, that the initiation fee for a small business like his to join Air Miles was $30,000, and then you had to pay your monthly marketing fees and your per mile fees and all this stuff. That's a lot for a small business. I can't even imagine what the big businesses have to pay for or pay to be part of Air Miles. So I can see why, if Air Miles kept that type of pricing in place, which I'm assuming they did, because they kind of, I can't say they had a stranglehold on the market, but they were so popular that they could charge, a pretty penny for what they offered, because they were the program to partner with. But then I think it just got, they got too big for their britches, and everything just kind of started falling apart. The expiring miles, cheaper back-end systems to make your own loyalty programs, competitors, and all this stuff. Everything kind of fell apart, and that's what brought us to Loyalty Ventures, their parent company declaring bankruptcy. A big part of that was losing Sobeys, Safeway, Empire Group. I think they accounted for 10% or over 10% of Loyalty Ventures revenue alone. So that's a big chunk of money there, and other partners they lost. So things fell apart. And I'm kind of rambling on here, but hopefully I'm just giving you guys a bit of background on what happened and what's led to this point. And I'm going to I am jumping again to another topic here. I noticed in my research, as this transpired around March 9th and 10th, that 3 days prior, on March 6th, the two top executives of Loyalty Ventures received over $4 million US of retention bonuses. This is 3 days before they declared bankruptcy, and could have potentially, and still can potentially, have all these Canadian members lose all their value in their miles. They've put in so much effort into earning those miles, and it can be lost. And here are the two big executives taking over $4 million in cash that was paid out on or about March 6th. So just take that into account as well, what this parent company was doing. So hopefully, I'm hopeful that Bank of Montreal can reinvigorate the program, but I just, I am a little bit doubtful, because I don't know what partners they can add. I don't know what extra value they can bring, because their history is to take away value from their credit card members. So in all honesty, right now it's only going to be a time will tell, and we'll see what Bank of Montreal can do if they're approved to take over the Air Miles program. So what should you do as a collector? Well, like I said, I'm not going to tell you to run out and redeem your miles. I'll tell you that I am personally going out and redeeming my miles, but there's also more to the big picture for my personal self here. Is Air Miles to me hasn't been a secondary, it's been like a tertiary program. I collected the miles kind of out of convenience, because I shopped at Sobeys, it was convenient, and I would, always show my Airs Miles card. I always show my loyalty cards everywhere I go. I make sure I earn my points with everything, just like you all should be. So to me, I was holding on, I had this dream balance that had built up, and I stopped collecting Dream Miles, switched to Cash Miles many years ago, so I would use that at Sobeys. It cycled around, so it was getting value out of the program there. But the Dream Miles just sat there because for travel-wise, was using everything else. Aeroplan, membership, rewards, Marriott, you name it. I just didn't find the need or time to use Air Miles, Reward Miles. So to me, I'm sitting on these, 15,000 plus miles and very unlikely going to use them for travel. So I started looking at the merchandise, and just before Christmas, this is before all this happened, I found, some good deals, got some Christmas presents through the miles then. And now with these issues happening, started redeeming as well. And honestly, the value I'm getting is as good or better than travel. The first redemption I made on the Thursday night when merchandise popped back up, I received 10.7 cents per mile. And I value Air Miles for travel at 9.5 to 10.5 cents. Cash rewards are 10.5 cents. So to get 10.7, that's a great deal. So that's the one thing Air Miles does have kind of going for them, is a lot of the merchandise rewards actually provide value that's pretty close to the travel. And, that's basically what Air Miles became. Years ago I started saying, the name is synonymous. It's popular in Canada, but they really should have a different name because it's not so much about the travel. Years ago when they actually put out some stats, it was less than 10% of Air Miles were actually being redeemed for travel. Everything else was gift cards, cash, cash rewards, merchandise, and all that stuff. So the name remained Air Miles, but it was less of a travel program and more of a merchandise cash type thing, if you know what I'm talking about. So anyways, so the merchandise was good, so I redeemed for those, and I'm still going. I used up about half my miles last week. Going to try and use up the rest of the miles this week. Because we still don't know 100% if Air Miles will continue on. I mean, I'm pretty sure they will. If anything, right now there's no further news at the time of recording this podcast. But so to me, everything looks like BMO is going to acquire Air Miles, and they'll continue the program. They have to for their own sake, for their customer base, so it'll be there. But like for me, because Air Miles is not my primary program, I'm totally fine and happy with redeeming all those miles right now and getting some merchandise. And this is merchandise we can use. I'm not just going out and buying a toaster because I have a toaster but want another one. I've actually redeemed for some things. My kids looked at the catalog because that's what I did. I sent them a text message. Here's a link to the merchandise. You guys go shopping, find things you like or want, and that's basically what we did. So I'm not going to go and say 100% go out and redeem your miles, but I'm leaning to that direction. If you want to take a look and see if there's things you can redeem your miles for, then I would, probably do it sooner than later. And that's, in a general with all loyalty programs, it's better to use them up sooner than later. Technically, you shouldn't hoard those miles because of devaluations, because of, I guess, this bankruptcy thing. This is the first time we've seen this happen. But I understand from most people's point of views, it's tough because you're trying to build up to that reward you really want, those dream rewards, those flights. And with Air Miles, it was tougher because they didn't have partial redemptions for flights. You had to build up the full amount of miles. So for a lot of people, they're like, you know what? I want to redeem for a flight to Europe, but it's going to take me 10,000 miles. So I'm at 6,000 right now. I'm going to keep collecting till I get to 10,000 rather than using those 6,000 for something else. So this is, all loyalty programs in general, but most of them had made it easier. Even Aeroplan has made it easier in that you can do part points and part cash. And I think if Air Miles had done that when they revamped their flight program about a year and a half ago, maybe we'd see a little bit. I don't know if it would have saved the program from going into bankruptcy, but I think it would have been a good move by them and made some more people happy by being able to do cash and miles for flights, which they never did. We had hoped, we'd put it out there saying, yeah, I hope this is something they do, but they never did. And maybe this is something BMO will do in the future. Let your people use those miles sooner rather than racking up the whole amount to begin with. And I mean, the BMO rewards program allows partial redemptions. It's only 150 points to $1. So why not do the same for air miles? Allow those partial redemptions for flights, and you may regain some of the the confidence, or people will regain confidence programs saying, yeah, I did use my miles. I was able to get a $600 airline ticket for $300. I used my miles for $300 of it, and I paid $300 cash. I saved, and now I'm happy. I'm going to continue with air miles because I find value in it. And I think that's really what they're going to need to do. So, it's really tough to say what's going to transpire here. We're going to, of course, keep you up to date. Keep checking the Rewards Canada blog for everything on air miles and Bank of Montreal and the whole bankruptcy proceedings. We'll keep you up to date. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, because we put that out every week. Covers all the news for over that week, just in case you miss a blog post, because they do get buried after a while, after more posts go up. And really, that's it. So I would love to hear feedback from you guys. If you want to comment on the Rewards Canada blog on the post, I'll put the links in the podcast page, rewardscanada.ca/podcast. You can even comment there as well, or on those blog posts. And yeah, that's all she wrote for this episode of the Rewards Canada podcast. I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to hit that like button, give us a 5-star review, leave reviews on your favorite listening platform, and I'll talk to you next time. The Rewards Canada podcast is produced in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with music produced by Regina's own TWKOP.